Heart of the Wolf, a paranormal romance novel by Mariposa. Chapter 28. Maddie's eyes scanned the parking lot. Traffic in and out of the fairground was just as crazy and chaotic as it had been earlier that day. All the headlights from the long line of cars were a bit disorienting. It took her a moment to spot Jim's familiar Silverado truck parked a few hundred yards from the front entrance of the fairground, out towards the cornfield. She saw Dean outside of the truck, leaning on the cap with his burly arms crossed over his potbelly. He was wearing a blue and red flannel button-down over a messy white shirt. His wispy blonde hair was a slicked-back mess from driving with the window open. He looked red-faced and scowling, just as she had envisioned him over the phone. Maddie felt a spike of anxiety at the sight of his angry, red face. Her hands curled into little fists. She didn't expect their conversation to go well, but she had to try. "Hey, Dad," she said as she approached the truck. Dean pushed off the passenger side door and opened it.
"Get your ass in. We're going home."
Maddie hesitated a short distance away. She was taken aback. Really? He wanted her to leave, just like that? She crossed her arms nervously over her chest. "Dad, I came out here to talk to you." "So, is everything okay?" Dean looked furious. His mouth clamped shut and he glared at her. Inside the truck, Jimmy Manor leaned over the center console from the driver's seat. He gave her a little wave. Maddie felt a bit better seeing him. Jim was tall and lanky, he had a big handlebar mustache and warm brown eyes. He was that type of easygoing guy who was friends with everyone. He and his wife weren't bad people. Actually, his most toxic trait was that he was friends with Dean.
"Hi, Maddie. Good to see you."
Jim called in a neighborly fashion, like she wasn't having a confrontation with her father in the middle of a muddy parking lot.
"How's school? Did you get our birthday card?"
"Yeah, I did, thanks." "School's fine, thanks for asking."
Good. Good, that's real good.
Right. Jim drove all the way out here to pick you up. So get your ass in the car. We're leaving. We can talk when we get home.
Maddie turned back to her father. "Dad, I'm not going home with you. I just came out to see if you're okay."
Oh, you're checking to see if I'm okay? I'm fucking dandy. Now I owe Jim a tank of gas. You gonna waste my time and my money on a Friday night? You lied to me, chickadee.
His voice darkened. Maddie felt a shiver of fear at her dad's tone. Would he take a swipe at her here in the parking lot? She wouldn't put it past him. But she wasn't getting in that truck. Once he got her alone back at the trailer, she didn't expect things to go well. "Look, I'm sorry I screwed up."
Yeah, right. You're grounded, so get your ass in the truck.
"Grounded? You can't ground me. I'm 19.
Ah. 19. You're a fucking kid. You'll obey my rules so long as you live under my roof.
I pay half the bills anyway."
Yeah. Well, maybe you'll change your tune after I throw you out on your ass.
Dean pointed a sausage-like finger in her face. She could tell he wanted to smack her. She could see the tension in his hand.
Nobody disrespects me. I told you to stay away from that old fuck. You've been lying to me all week. I had a good long chat with your manager at the hardware store. I know you were out Wednesday night, too. So yeah, you're grounded. Now get in the fucking car.
"No, I'm not going home."
Get in the car. Now, before I knock you into next week.
Dean reached for her arm and Maddie ducked away. He reached again and grabbed her jacket, dragging her close enough so he could catch her elbow in a crushing grip. Maddie whimpered, half expecting a blow across the face. Dean pulled her so hard, she thought he would dislocate her shoulder.
"Hey, Dean!"
At that moment, a fist came flying out of nowhere and connected with Dean's jaw. Maddie watched his head snap back in slow motion. She gasped. Dean released her arm with a groan and fell back against the truck.
Whoa. Holy Toledo. You okay, Dean?
Jim yelled from the driver's seat of the truck. Gareth grabbed Maddie and pulled her behind him. He placed his body protectively in front of her. She stared at his broad back in awe. Where did he come from? Then she glanced around. A few curious people were glancing in their direction. She wondered if someone would call for a security guard. Her stepdad looked like a fallen Humpty Dumpty against the side of the Silverado truck, all pot-bellied and angry. He stared up at Gareth, his face bright red. Blood leaked down his chin from a split lip. He seemed unaware of the injury.
Oh, here he is. Here's the guy.
Dean yelled to Jim in the car, pointing his finger at Gareth. Jim didn't look eager to get out of the truck. Then to Gareth, Dean said with a glower.
You're the asshole who's fucking my daughter.
Yeah, I am.
Maddie's mouth dropped open. Technically they weren't having sex yet, but Gareth didn't seem concerned about that detail.
Glad you could make it out, Dean, 'cause I got some words.
Gareth moved. He slung his big arm around Dean's shoulders in the most intimidating way imaginable, then started walking with her father away from the Silverado truck. Maddie gave Jim a little wave, then followed after them. Jim called out the window of the truck.
You want me to wait?
Yeah, can you?
Sure thing, hun.
Maddie trailed after Gareth in a strange sort of daze. They walked up the side of the fair in the opposite direction of traffic, moving away from the front entrance and the busy parking lot, away from the bright headlights and crowds of people. It looked like Gareth was leading her father to a more private, secluded corner near the back fence of the fairground. When Gareth seemed satisfied with their location, he shoved Dean bodily away from him, sending him stumbling into the wooden fence. Dean sputtered at Gareth furiously, but he seemed at a loss for words.
All right, so let's talk, Dean. I saw your texts. I got a problem with you threatening my girl.
That's my daughter. I can talk to her however I want.
Yeah, well, she's my girl now, and all that's gonna change.
Maddie felt a shiver at his words. My girl. Dean gathered himself up and pointed at Maddie.
You think you can fuck my daughter? Come round and start telling me what to do? Fuck off, man. Acting like some hero. You're just after those big tits and tight pussy.
Maddie didn't see Gareth move, but suddenly her stepfather was on the ground. Gareth was standing over him, his fists clenched, poised to strike again. Shit. Maddie's heart started to race. By the looks of it, he had punched Dean square in the mouth. Dean groaned and spit out a tooth. When Gareth spoke next, his voice was a low growl.
Now you gonna listen. Last Thursday, some bastards broke into your trailer, scared Maddie real good. I don't like it when my girl's scared, Dean. Turns out you owe them money.
What? Huh? I don't know anything about that.
Her stepdad didn't sound very convincing. Dean groaned and dragged himself into a sitting position. Maddie watched his bravado slowly drain away. His narrow, bloodshot eyes flickered back to the Silverado truck. He looked like he was thinking of running. Gareth planted himself firmly between Dean and the parking lot. He folded his big arms across his chest.
I've had these assholes show up twice at my shop this week. They won't get off my ass, and it's your fault, Dean. You fucked up, so you're gonna tell me what kind of shit you stepped in.
Maddie watched, her mouth gaped open. She had never seen her stepfather shrink down so low. He looked like a worm.
All right. I took out a loan. Just a small amount. Had to pay back some debts at the casino. But then I couldn't pay the loan back, so I struck a deal with these guys to move a few bricks. Just a few bricks. Not a big deal. But I lost them.
Bricks of cocaine?
Dean's eyes flashed.
Bricks of dirt for all you care.
All right, so you lost them.
Yeah, they went missing.
They went missing, or you used them.
I ain't done that.
Dean grimaced. He spit red at the ground from his bleeding gums.
The bricks went missing, and that's the end of it.
Well, these fuckers don't think it's the end. They want their money, Dean. What are you gonna do?
Dean gave Gareth a wild look.
Why do you care? You working for them? Holy fuck. You're one of them, aren't you? You're one of those bastards. I should have seen it sooner. Man, just stay the fuck away from me. I'll get you the money. I just need more time.
I don't give a shit about your money, but I give a shit about your daughter. It's nice of you to finally tell her the truth.
Gareth grabbed her stepdad under the arms and dragged him to his feet. Then he gripped him by the shirt and forced him to look at Maddie.
Now apologize.
What? What for?
For putting her in danger, for shitting all over her life. Apologize for being a worthless parent and a piece of shit.
Maddie dropped her eyes at first, feeling embarrassed. But she couldn't deny her anger. Her stepfather's confession was shocking, but it made too much sense. All those letters from Gelson's and Associates were for a delinquent loan, just as she suspected. So he tried to sell drugs to pay off his debt, but he lost the cocaine. Sure. Right. She very much doubted those bricks of cocaine went missing. The friends he brought over from the bar weren't exactly discreet. She recalled seeing plenty of baggies over the last year. Her dad loved a good party. She was pretty sure even Jim had bought an 8-ball off him. Stealing her nerves, Maddie forced herself to raise her head and look Dean in the eye. Well? Don't you have anything to say to me? Despite being pinned against a fence post in a cold dark parking lot at night, Dean still looked petulant. By his expression, Maddie could tell that he didn't really want to apologize. Holy shit, she thought. He really doesn't think he did anything wrong. Gareth shook him by the nape of his neck. Finally, Dean stuttered.
I'm sorry, Maddie. So now you know the truth. Anyway, yup, sorry about all that with the trailer and the drugs and stuff.
It was a pathetic sort of apology, but Maddie knew it was as good as she was going to get. Her fists tightened. She hesitated for a moment as her rage built up and her pulse throbbed in her neck. Then she stepped up to Dean, crossing the space between them, and slapped him open-handed across the face. The sharp sound of her open palm striking his cheek rang out through the air. Maddie's heart raced. She was shocked at herself. She had never thought she would have the guts to do that. Even Gareth looked surprised. She shook out her wrist. Then she backed away from the two men. The smack was supposed to make her feel better, but instead, she felt kinda numb.
I'm sorry, Maddie.
It's fine, Dad. Of course it wasn't fine, but there didn't seem to be much else to say. Then Gareth released him. Dean stumbled a few steps forward, recovered his balance, then started limping back to the truck. Stringy wisps of blonde hair stuck to his sweaty face. He looked in pretty bad shape, his face flushed, his nose bright red, a dribble of blood leaking from his swollen bottom lip. Maddie followed after him. She stood at the side of the parking lot as Dean climbed into the cab of the Silverado. Jim helped him buckle his seatbelt, then he rolled down the driver's side window as Gareth circled around the truck. Maddie watched curiously, wondering what Gareth was going to do. He pulled out his wallet from his back pocket and riffled through it, then he handed Jim a large bill. Maddie didn't see exactly how much money he handed over, but it was enough to fill the gas tank, she was sure. She leaned forward, trying to catch Gareth's words as he spoke to Jim, but his voice was too low. Jim laughed unexpectedly. Then he said,
"Hey, shit happens, no worries. I'll take him home. Thanks for the gas money."
Gareth tapped the side of the truck as the Silverado kicked forward. Jim pulled away from the curb and guided the big truck into traffic. Maddie watched the truck roll away until it disappeared in the long row of cars headed to the exit. Gareth rejoined Maddie's side. He stood next to her in silence, his hands shoved casually in his pockets as they both gazed after the Silverado. "Hey, Gareth?"
Yeah.
"Thank you."
Anytime, baby girl.
On sudden impulse, she turned and wrapped her arms around his waist. She buried her face in his chest. She felt tears sting her eyes. Fuck, she didn't want to cry, except here she was, crying like a baby. She hadn't realized all the tension she was holding inside. She had never seen anyone stand up to Dean like that before, not for her sake. She was overwhelmed with emotion. Gareth's arms encircled her. He pressed her into his big, hard body. They stood like that at the side of the parking lot, embracing for several minutes. Maddie couldn't hold back, she was a complete mess, sobbing and sniffling, ruining his cotton shirt in a downpour of tears. He rested his chin on the top of her head, holding her firmly, rubbing a gentle hand across her back. Finally, her tears slowed down to a few hiccups. Gareth glanced down at her face. His thumb wiped a damp trail from her cheek. For a moment they stood like that, pressed together as Maddie regained her composure. She felt warm and safe in his arms. "I'm really sorry," she finally mumbled into his chest.
For what, baby?
"For not letting you do that sooner." Gareth grinned.
Yeah, well, now you know. You got a problem, you come get me. All right?
She nodded into his shirt. "Right," she said, her words muffled by his jacket.
Hey,
"Yeah."
you got a minute. I want to talk to you.
Maddie felt a little shiver of trepidation, though she wasn't sure why. What did he want to talk about? She didn't think she could handle another scolding after all that. But maybe he didn't mean it like that. "Okay," she said in a small voice.
Come on, walk with me.
Gareth released her from his firm hug. He took her hand and started walking along the side of the parking lot, back towards the entrance to the fair. She walked next to him, wondering what he wanted to say. He guided her to an empty, secluded spot under a maple tree, somewhat removed from the onrush of people. There, he paused. He turned to face her. Maddie took a deep breath to steady herself. Then she looked up at him, meeting his eyes, reminded of his height and his imposing presence. The clouds broke apart at that moment. Silver light illuminated Gareth's face. Maddie gazed up at him, entranced by his golden eyes. He looked exotic and mysterious, just like she remembered him from the mountain. Unexpectedly, he pulled something out of the pocket of his leather jacket. She glanced down. He was holding a stuffed brown bear from the prize shelf at the shooting gallery. "Oh! Did you win that for me?"
Yeah.
"Wow, it's adorable." She reached out to take it, but he stopped her.
Wait. First, Maddie, there's a question I gotta ask you. You ready?
She nodded, her mouth going dry.
So, I understand you want to go slow. But I think we both agreed the friends thing is getting a little old.
She nodded silently. She felt the same way, she just didn't know what to do about it.
So, if we're gonna keep this up, I think we gotta be real with one another. I'll always be your friend, but I want to be more. And I think you want that too. So, will you be my girlfriend?
"Oh, well." Maddie chewed on her lip. She wasn't good at talking about her feelings with people. It was much easier to throw a tantrum or run away. But she couldn't run away from him anymore, and she didn't want to. After the way he confronted Dean, it didn't make any sense to pretend to be just friends. But getting into a relationship with him was a little scary. He was older than her, intimidating as hell, and there was this wild side to him that she didn't really understand. But no one had ever treated her with so much loyalty and respect. She knew he really cared for her, genuinely and truly, and she cared for him, too. He raised an eyebrow. He seemed so confident, yet at her hesitation, his eyes flickered with uncertainty. That flash of vulnerability made her heart melt. "I mean, yeah, duh, of course I'll be your girlfriend," she finally said, trying to act nonchalant, but she sounded super awkward to her own ears. Damn, why couldn't she be cool and smooth? Gareth released a big sigh, like he had been holding his breath.
Shit, you got me all nervous.
"I make you nervous?"
More than you know, little girl. Anyway, here's bear number 2. Looks like we're starting a collection.
He handed over the stuffed bear to her with a grin. Maddie squeezed it with her fingers. It was a little larger than the white bear he bought her before their date at Zippy's. It had curly brown fur, and it was dressed in little green overalls.
You gonna name it?
"Geez, I'm not a kid," Maddie scoffed. Then, with a sly grin, she added, "Yeah, probably." He offered her his arm, which she took. Then they started back toward the fairground. Maddie felt like a heavy weight had been taken off her shoulders, though she wasn't sure why. So, if I'm your girlfriend, does this mean I have to move out of the trailer?
We'll see.
It wasn't really an answer, but Maddie wasn't worried about it anymore. Dean's confrontation with Gareth had been a turning point, though where that road was headed, she couldn't guess. Whatever happened next, she and Gareth would figure it out together. Then Maddie's phone pinged. She checked it. Looks like B and everyone else is headed to the haunted house. We should hurry up and meet them.
Sounds good, baby girl. Should we tell them we're not neighbors anymore?
Maddie snorted with unexpected laughter. Geez, after all the drama with Dean, she had almost forgotten about the neighbor thing. It was pretty dumb. Yeah, I guess they've already figured it out. She messed with the buttons on her flannel jacket. To be honest, Maddie felt a little nervous about telling the group about their new relationship status. She and Gareth were finally going official. No more hiding in the shadows or darting forbidden looks around the hardware store. It would be a whole new world. She expected B to be happy for her, but Becca seemed a little disapproving. She hoped Becca's attitude toward Gareth didn't make the whole night awkward.
Hey, come here.
Gareth noticed the little frown of concern on her face. With a gasp, Maddie found herself pulled into his arms one more time. He leaned down and captured her lips with his own. His hand brushed her hair back from her face as he kissed her, slow and wet and sensual. Maddie wasn't used to kissing him in public. She couldn't really appreciate it fully, she was too distracted by the crowds of people. She felt the urge to pull away after a minute, but he took a few steps forward, pushing her back up against the plaster facade of the fairgrounds entrance. He pinned her there between his big body and the front entrance of the carnival. Crowds of people pushed past them, coming and going from the fair, but he kept her sheltered with his broad shoulders. He focused on her mouth, passionately kissing her over and over, swallowing her little sighs, sliding his tongue down her throat until she forgot where she was standing. Fuck, he was relentless. She started to feel a growing wave of arousal. Her skin felt hot and flushed. Her breasts tingled pleasantly, aching to be touched. She could easily imagine abandoning the fairground and going back to his car, finishing what they had started in the back seat of his Camaro. When he finally released her, Maddie felt drunk. Her eyes were hooded, her lips bestung and swollen from his passionate kisses. She gazed up at him, her arousal written plainly on her face. He grinned at her wanton expression. Then he licked his devilish tongue across her lower lip.
You ready for this haunted house?
Maddie nodded, speechless.
You can grab onto me if you get scared.
Maddie couldn't respond. She wanted to grab onto him right now. He noticed her heated look and leaned in to nibble at her chin. He softly bit the side of her jaw. Fuck. He was an animal. I'll be fine, she managed to say in a breathy voice.
All right, but you got that anxiety thing. I brought a CBD pen just in case.
For real?
Yeah, 'cause you keep forgetting the one I bought you.
I still have it. I use it before I go to sleep at night.
Good. Glad to hear it. But if this haunted house is too much for you, just say the word and we can bail.
No, let's go. I'm ready for it.
All right, if you say so.
His hand brushed between her legs just for a moment, sending a jolt of electricity through her body. Maddie gazed up at him, warm and throbbing with pent-up desire. Then he straightened up, leaving her bereft, the night air cooling her flushed skin. He slung his arm around her shoulders and led her back into the fair. Heart of the Wolf, a paranormal romance novel by author A. Mariposa. Chapter 29. The line for the haunted manor wrapped around half of the carnival. Maddie and Gareth found B and the rest of their group about halfway down the long line. The people on either side of them were pretty tipsy. Nobody said a word when they cut in. As the hour grew late, families with young kids headed home while more and more college kids showed up, already drunk from pre-gaming in their cars. The fair took on a different kind of energy, rowdier, darker, a bit more chaotic, if that were possible. B looked relieved when she saw Maddie.
Oh good, You're still here. So how's your dad? Is everything okay?
Yeah, he's fine. There was a misunderstanding, so, I just had to sort out a few things. Becca turned to look at her with a questioning gaze. She glanced between Maddie and Gareth. Then her gaze landed on the stuffed bear in Maddie's arms. She looked back up at Gareth, but she didn't look super happy. Maddie thought she looked kind of annoyed. When she spoke, her voice was a little strained.
Where'd you get that? Did you win that for her?
Yep, she's got a collection going.
It's cute. So, Maddie, what does your dad think of Gareth? Has he met him?
Oh yeah, we've met.
Gareth answered her. His tone didn't invite more questions. The line moved forward. They approached the front entrance to the haunted manor. Maddie's gaze traveled over the restored Victorian house. It looked like a spooky dollhouse, a decadent porch, bay windows, a steeply pitched roof and whimsical, twirling little finials. The front yard was littered with fake headstones and plastic skeletons. A slew of creepy old props, straight from a grandmother's attic, covered the wraparound porch. The eaves were covered in cobwebs, and strings of neon lights wrapped around the banisters. Their host, a college-aged actor, stood at the front door of the haunted house. His face was painted white like a zombie. He wore a butler's uniform with a velvet top hat. Fake blood spattered his white cravat and dress shirt. He wore a mic clipped to his velvet lapel, and he entertained the long line of guests with a little bit of haunted history about the manor. Maddie listened with some interest. It sounded like a daughter of the Beaumont family had gone insane while living in the house. The young woman claimed to be possessed by a demon, which made her do atrocious and violent things, like attempting to murder her younger sibling. So the Beaumont family locked her in the attic of the house. One day, a maid found the young woman hanging from the rafters of the ceiling. It was a tragedy. The young woman had hung herself using her own bed sheets. It was a haunting story, to be sure. Bea was all about it. She even made a little note in her phone to look up more history on the Beaumont haunting. Maddie wasn't all that interested in ghosts. Sure, hauntings were spooky, but not as scary as an unexpected property tax bill. Their vampire concierge allowed groups of 10 people at a time to enter the haunted house. Once inside, a small legion of actors and volunteers ushered people through the manor, room by room, where they were subjected to all kinds of horrors. A siren blared every time a new group was released into the house. Maddie assumed the 5-minute wait between groups was for the monsters to reset their positions. Suddenly, a piercing scream emitted from somewhere inside the manor. The hair on Maddie's arms stood on end. The people in line all jumped, then started talking excitedly.
Oh man! That was a good one!
They really outdid themselves this year. It's my second time going through. Totally worth the wait.
I hope I don't piss myself. I drank a lot of beer.
I don't know if I can go in. It looks so scary.
Maddie tried to look brave, but it was hard to do in a crowd of nervous drunk people.
You sure you're up for this?
Gareth asked, glancing down at her. Maddie nodded. She tried to keep her cool. She wanted to be a badass, but in truth, the scream unnerved her. Bea pointed at one of the windows high up on the side of the house that might have been to the attic.
Look there! I saw a face in the window.
A few people turned to look, including Maddie. She didn't see anyone up there, though. The window was covered by gauzy white curtains. It was pretty small. The people standing in line around them grumbled and looked away, unimpressed. Bea turned around and poked Vin's chest. She insisted.
Really, I saw someone. I wouldn't make that up.
I believe you. I bet there's an actress up there playing the role of the crazy Beaumont daughter.
Yeah, probably.
Bea said, though she had a doubtful frown on her face. The line inched forward, a certain tension lingering over the guests. Everyone was excited to go into the haunted house. Maddie kinda wanted to get the whole experience over with, rip it off like a band-aid. Waiting for the line to move was a special kind of torture. To pass the time, Levi turned to Gareth.
So Gareth, you said you own that auto shop up Highway 20? Where did you learn to work on cars?
Started up in Alaska when I was 18, after I joined the Army. I've been doing it a while.
Oh wow, so you're a soldier?
Yup, I'm a vet.
That's pretty neat. My dad was in the Army. Thank you for your service. You know, we're always hiring good people down at Jepson Industries. What kind of engines do you work on?
Just auto and diesel.
They started talking more about machinery stuff. It sounded like Becca's boyfriend was also a bit of a car guy. He worked at a manufacturing plant called Jepson's outside of Davenport. The plant employed a good chunk of Jefferson County. Gareth answered his questions politely, but he didn't seem interested in a job.
So how much do you make as a mechanic?
Babe, that's rude.
Becca elbowed him. Levi flushed and scratched the back of his neck.
I'm just curious. Jepson pays its mechanics good wages, especially supervisors.
No worries, I own the shop, so it's more than average. We're doing good this year. Take home is over 6 figures.
Maddie's ears perked. Over 6 figures? That was a lot of money. Maybe she had misheard him? She gazed up at Gareth, a little shocked. He wasn't looking at her. He stood in a wide stance, his arms folded as he chatted amicably with Levi. She hadn't thought much about his salary, considering the rusty Camaro he drove around in. But restoring a classic car wasn't cheap, even if he was doing most of the work himself. Levi seemed equally surprised.
Is that above average?
Oh yeah, most of it's from the summer rush. Lots of RVs with issues and cars breaking down on road trips. We were working 7 days a week, huh, Vin?
Vin and Bea were having their own private, mumbled conversation a little ways away. Vin glanced up.
Yeah, summer was nuts. I basically lived at the shop. It was worth it, though. Got a nice bonus.
Summer's really that busy, huh?
Levi asked, a hand to his chin, thinking.
I guess that makes sense with all the tourists driving through the Adirondacks, heading back and forth from Canada.
We get a lot of big trucks coming over the mountain during the summer. Chains break down, wheels fly off, and axles get bent. The tow back to the shop can cost a couple grand. That's just getting them to the garage. Then overnight parking fees. It adds up. It all gets billed to their companies, so the guys don't care.
Nothing like a midnight call to tow a truck off the mountain.
Gareth clapped Vin on the shoulder.
Yeah, but you always showed up.
He pays double time on night tows.
Well shit, maybe I should work for you.
The men laughed. Bea was listening with some interest. She poked Vin in the ribs.
So is he your boss?
Yep, I'm just a maintenance tech right now, but Mr. Delarosa is training me to become a mechanic.
Maddie caught Bea's look. Her friend's face clearly said,
Mr. Delarosa?
Maddie blushed. She didn't really know how to react. Then Becca exclaimed loudly, interrupting their conversation.
Line's moving. Finally.
The siren sounded above the door to the haunted manor, shaking Maddie from her thoughts. The vampire concierge unleashed a malevolent laugh, very theatrical, and said in a spooky voice,
Are you ready for a scary good time?
Oh God, yes. Bring it on.
Bea shouted with vigor. The vampire undid the red velvet rope barring the door. One by one, their group filed into the haunted house. The front door creaked loudly as it opened and closed behind them with a loud slam. Immediately, a blast of cold air struck them in the face from a fan positioned above the doorway. Maddie yelped and almost dropped her stuffed bear. Bea gasped.
Wow, I didn't expect that.
They get you right on the first step, huh?
Becca grinned at her little sister as their party of 6 filtered through the foyer of the old house.
Honestly, the restoration is kind of cooler than the Halloween decor.
Levi pointed out, looking at the antique chandelier hanging above them. A gorgeous, handcrafted wardrobe stood near the front door, where coats and hats might have been hung up by a stuffy, antebellum butler.
I think these are the original floors. Look, they put down plastic over the wood so it doesn't get damaged.
That's great, babe. But have you noticed the murder scene?
The walls of the manor were covered in fake blood. It took Maddie a moment for her eyes to adjust to the low lighting. A recording of fake screams and haunting music played over a sound system. It was pretty good. As Maddie looked around the murky room, she saw a bunch of dismembered fake body parts strewn about. A pair of fake legs were stuffed into the dumbwaiter, suggesting the murderer had tried to stash a body inside. The windows were blocked off by black drapes, so no glimpse of the carnival outside could ruin the ambience. With the red lighting, fog machine, and spooky soundtrack, it was almost like they had stepped into another world. The words Red Rum were painted on the wall above a staircase to the second floor, but access to the upper floors was roped off. Bea went to the edge of the staircase and peered up it with an intense frown, like she was looking for someone.
Do you think these stairs lead up to the attic?
I think they lead to the second floor, but it's roped off. Come on, we're supposed to go this way. Follow the path. We should get moving. They're going to send in another party soon.
Becca pointed straight ahead. A very clear path, lit by red string lights, led from the foyer down a hallway, deeper into the house. The hallway was very dark. Maddie thought she saw some glow-in-the-dark cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. Vin started down the hallway first. Bea dragged Maddie behind her by the wrist. Gareth followed them. Becca and Levi brought up the rear. Levi walked behind Becca with his hands on her shoulders. He kept turning her towards the scary props, a stupid grin on his face. Becca gasped, smacking his arm the third time he did it.
Don't you dare tickle me or pinch me. This place is scary enough.
They passed through a haunted drawing room. Actors dressed like Victorian zombies were drinking from an antique tea set. One actress played the part of a grieving widow. She wore a black dress and veil. Maddie guessed the other actresses were supposed to be the widow's daughters, or something like that. Maybe it tied into the story of the young woman who went insane? She wished she had paid more attention to the vampire concierge out front. Fake rubber rats covered the settee and the little ornate tea tables. Antique damask wallpaper gave the room a creepy dollhouse feeling. The electric wall sconces flickered ominously. Levi reached over a rope barrier to poke at the wall.
I think this is the original wallpaper, or maybe they scavenged it from another local site. Hard to say.
That's really interesting, babe.
This is so my vibe,
Bea said, looking at the velvet settee and the widow in her gothic dress. Maddie's group walked through the drawing room, following the path outlined by red lights on the floor. A barrier of rope stopped people from wandering too far off the pathway. When they reached the far end of the room, Bea stepped on a strange panel duct taped to the floor, and a trapdoor sprung open in the ceiling. A shower of little plastic spiders fell on them, along with a cloud of fake cobwebs. Becca screamed, fighting off the cobwebs with wild hands.
Fucking cheese and crackers!
Maddie gasped and took a few steps backward. She stumbled into the solid wall of Gareth's chest. His big hands landed on her shoulders. She was startled, but luckily she wasn't scared of spiders. She was used to walking through the woods at night, so she recovered quickly. When she glanced up, she saw a big grin on Gareth's face.
You good?
I'm fine, she grumbled, brushing the little plastic pests off of her jacket. Next, they entered a cobweb-covered library full of musty old bookshelves. Flickering red lamps lit the room. Levi almost immediately left the path and started leaning over the rope barrier, trying to get a look at the old books that lined the shelves.
Do you think these are real collector's editions?
No, babe, I really don't.
Oh, cool. They're all horror novels. Look, it's Bram Stoker's Dracula and Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. That's Sherlock Holmes. And there's Edgar Allan Poe. Did you know that Edgar Allan Poe wrote the first mystery novel? Well, it was a short story, The Murder in the Rue Morgue in 1841.
Did you learn all that in your lit classes at NYU?
No, it's on this plaque right here. Kinda hard to read in this lighting though.
Suddenly, a very convincing vampire leapt out from behind a bookshelf. The actor mocked them with an evil laugh.
I am Dracula! I will drink your blood!
Becca almost attacked him. Levi dragged her away. The vampire actor hissed and clawed at her with gnarly monster hands. Beneath the red light, his costume looked pretty convincing. Maddie and Bea stumbled into each other, laughing. The vampire cried out to them from the other side of the rope barrier.
Beware what lies ahead! Beware Hell's Kitchen!
Maddie and Bee exchanged a glance.
Hell's Kitchen?
Sounds interesting. Next, they walked through a bathroom the size of a spa. The floor was covered in little thumbnail-sized tiles. Stained glass windows lined the eastern-facing wall. The clawfoot bathtub took up most of the space in the bathroom. Becca whistled appreciatively.
Oh, wow. This is nice.
Nope, it's really not nice. Look at that.
Bee pointed. The water inside the tub was dyed red and looked convincingly like blood. A headless corpse was lying in the tub. It looked gruesome and disturbing. One limp arm dangled over the porcelain rim. Maddie stared at the discolored arm, fascinated, then forced herself to look away. She had to walk pretty close to the tub to exit out the other side of the bathroom. She cringed slightly as they walked by. At first she thought the corpse was just a prop, but as she passed by the tub, the headless actress reached out and grabbed her leg. Maddie screamed bloody murder. She jumped a foot in the air and bolted. She flew through the bathroom, out the second doorway, and into the dark hall. There, she got tangled up in a blackout curtain that was covering one of the windows. The curtain tripped her up and she fell, yanking it off the rings. She fell down with a cry. Orange neon light from the carnival outside flooded the hallway. Gareth followed on her heels. He reached her in the hallway, knelt down by her side, and started untangling her from the black drapes.
Fuck! What the heck? Get this thing off me!
Hey, Easy. Calm down. I got it.
He finally got the curtain untangled from her legs and helped her up to her feet. Maddie groaned as she looked down at the bundle of drapes on the floor. Then her eyes traveled to the window. It looked like they were at the back of the manor. Through the branches of a skeletal tree, she could see the distant line for the haunted house weaving through the fairground. Fuck, Maddie groaned. Oh my God! She had totally freaked out. It was a little embarrassing, but she couldn't seem to calm down. Fuck, this is terrifying, Maddie thought. Adrenaline pounded through her veins in a hot rush. Bee and Becca both came to check on her. Bee was laughing.
I don't feel like such a dumbass now. Are you okay, Maddie? They got you good.
She nodded, but Maddie felt far from okay. Because of the adrenaline, she felt like her senses were heightened. Becca's perfume was stifling in the small space. She imagined she could hear Bee's pulse from a few feet away. Shit, I need to calm down. But her heart kept racing. She was ready to fight. Maddie took a deep breath and coughed. Actually, everyone's BO seemed excruciatingly potent and distinct in the stuffy hallway. Not only could she tell apart their separate deodorants, but underneath all the soap and body wash, she could discern an earthy mix of sweat. Levi particularly stank of fear, even though he was trying to hide it for Becca's sake. Maddie was amazed at herself. She felt like she had stumbled across a hidden superpower. She could actually smell Levi's fear. Instinctively, she knew what the metallic, tangy odor meant. What in the world? How could she smell emotions? She glanced at Becca, using her super sharp nose and tuning in. Becca was angry? At Levi? Or maybe it was a fear response. On the other hand, her friend, Bee, smelled aroused. She was very attracted to Vin, and Vin was high. His vape juice contained THC. Holy shit. How could she tell all that with a few sniffs? Then her eyes turned to Gareth. His scent was different from the rest of the group. And not just because he smelled utterly delicious. His scent wasn't anything like Levi or Vin or the other girls. He seemed like a completely different animal. She stared at him, fascinated by this new awareness, as the rest of their group sauntered past down the hallway, giddy and excited. Gareth noticed her look. He met her gaze. They faced each other across the narrow hall, half illuminated by the neon orange lights outside the window. He didn't move. Just watched her silently, waiting. Maddie didn't understand it, but she found herself stepping forward. She sniffed the air like a cautious puppy. Her eyes traveled up his tall frame. Why was he so different? His scent meant something to her. Her bones sang with the knowledge, but it was like she had amnesia. She couldn't remember. Gareth crossed his arms and leaned back against the wall. You. Maddie hesitated.
Yeah. What?
He gazed at her expectantly. His eyes dared her to continue. To be bold. He knows something. He's waiting for me to figure it out. What is going on? Am I losing my mind? Maddie lost her nerve. She shrank back.
Never mind, we should catch up with the rest of the group.
She started to walk away, but Gareth caught her arm as she passed by. She looked up at him in surprise. He searched her face with a stern gaze.
You feeling all right?
She nodded, a bit pale and sweaty. Yeah.
You dizzy, nauseous, you've been fainting in class or anything?
No, I'm okay. Really. Your mom's tea helps. I've been drinking it.
Good.
He searched her face again, like he was looking for something specific, then he released her arm. He seemed reluctant to let her go. Maddie felt a little unnerved. She suddenly felt like something altogether other was walking at her back, something predatory and inhuman. She couldn't explain it, because of course Gareth was just a man. It's the haunted house getting to me, she thought. Together, they walked down the hallway into the next room, where they met up with everyone else. Their party of 6 stood outside a set of heavy oak double doors, propped open. The room beyond was lit with spooky purple and blue lighting. It looked like a big hotel-style kitchen with several workstations and a long central island. Pots and pans hung from racks along the far wall. A ghastly soundtrack played over the speakers mounted in the corners of the room.
This must be Hell's Kitchen,
Becca said as they entered through the wide doorway. A big fat lady in a white apron was hacking away at a pile of raw meat in the center of the kitchen. It was probably raw pork, but under the glowing purple lights, it looked convincingly like a human leg. The meat made a nasty, wet thwacking sound every time the giant cleaver swung down. The path of string lights along the ground led them right past the wicked cook's workstation. As they passed by the butcher block countertop, the gluttonous actress turned toward them with a snarl. Her makeup was gruesome. It looked like she had boils all over her face. She rattled the butcher knife threateningly.
Who's trespassing in my kitchen? I'll put you in my stew.
Run!
Becca screamed. They bolted. The nasty woman chased after them, running down the other side of the long kitchen island, swinging her meat cleaver above her head. She hurled threats and obscenities through the kitchen. She even hurled bits of fake raw meat after them. Some of it stuck to the back of Levi's sweater. Becca laughed, trying to pick the goo off of him.
Ah, gross. I think it's dyed cabbage, not real meat.
It better not be real meat.
At the other side of the kitchen, Becca and Levi crashed through another set of double doors into an empty dining room. Maddie caught a glimpse of a long banquet table covered in fake cobwebs, pewter plates, and antique candle holders. Vin and Gareth followed after them. Bea grabbed Maddie's wrist and dragged her in another direction. She went off the path, under the rope barrier, then dashed to a smaller door on the left side of the kitchen. It looked like this door led into a separate part of the house.
Bea, what are you doing?
Just follow me.
Bea dragged Maddie through the second exit. She didn't stop running, but pulled Maddie through the next hallway, making random turns. Maddie didn't hear anyone following them. The kitchen actress must not have noticed their sudden departure in the wrong direction. This part of the house wasn't decorated for Halloween. Maddie got the terrible feeling that they were trespassing on a part of the manor closed off to guests. But her friend, Bea, didn't seem to care. The little goth girl ran along, keeping a surprisingly strong grip on Maddie's arm. She dragged Maddie through room after darkened room. Then Bea found a staircase and started up it. Maddie panted, following behind her.
Bea, what are you doing? Where are we going?
To the attic.
What? Are you crazy?
Maybe. I saw something in that window, Maddie. I swear I saw a woman. She waved at me. I want to see if there's an actress in the attic, because I think I saw a real ghost.
Bea looked back at Maddie, her eyes illuminated with a fierce glow. Maddie felt a cold shiver run down her whole body. Oh no, Bea, that's a bad idea. We should get back to the group.
Fuck it. I have to go look.
They reached the top of the narrow staircase. Both girls stopped on the landing to catch their breath. They were on the second floor of the house. Maddie leaned against the wooden banister. She wiped the sleeve of her heavy flannel jacket across her sweaty brow. With all the lights and electric equipment running downstairs, the manor's second floor was stiflingly hot and humid. Maddie looked back down the staircase behind her. They were in a separate part of the house, removed from the walkthrough for the haunted manor. Below the staircase, the first floor was obscured by deep shadows. From this vantage point, she could hear the distant strains of haunting music and spooky sounds from the themed part of the house. It felt like she stood inside a labyrinth of dark shadows, closed doors, and weird little hallways. She had no idea how they were going to get back to Gareth and the rest of the group. Maddie turned and looked around the second floor. She couldn't see much in either direction. Then Bea turned on her phone light and flashed it around. A black and white photograph of the Beaumont family hung above the landing for the second floor. Maddie's eyes looked over it. She didn't know enough about the family to identify any of the figures in the painting, but she saw a woman, 2 children, and a stern-looking father posed on a settee. The father had a wide handlebar mustache that grew past his lips, and the mother wore her hair up in a proper bun. They were dressed in Victorian fashion, with clothes buttoned up to their jawlines and big puffy sleeves. The younger children wore what looked like lace dresses. Bea asked, pointing at a young, morose-looking woman who stood at the back of the photo.
Do you think that's the crazy daughter who killed herself?
I don't know, Bea. I don't see a plaque or anything. Maybe it is? Bea looked fascinated. She stood up on her tiptoes, trying to get a better look.
She looks kind of like the girl I saw in the window.
Are you sure you're not just fucking with me?
No, I wouldn't do that. I swear, I wouldn't lie about this. You know my grandmother was a shaman, right? She saw spirits all the time. She could dreamwalk and everything.
Bea glanced over at her with intense, dark eyes. Maddie felt another horrible shiver of foreboding. She had thought to humor Bea by following her up to the attic, but now she felt a little tendril of fear slide down her neck. Had Bea actually seen the Beaumont ghost?
All right, I'll go with you to the attic to check it out, but just for the record, I think this is a terrible idea.
Fuck yeah, I knew you'd be my partner in crime.
Bea gave her a cheeky little grin. Maddie turned away from the creepy photo. She looked up and down the second floor hallway. They could choose between 2 directions, right or left. She saw a few paintings hanging from the wood-paneled walls and several closed bedroom doors. At the far end of the hall, Maddie saw a window and another staircase leading higher up. It probably led to the 3rd floor. Then above that would be the attic. Shit, was she really doing this? She didn't want to see a real ghost. Even though she didn't really believe in the supernatural, there was always a slim chance, right? And Bea's grandma was a shaman. What if she really saw something? Together, the 2 girls started walking down the dark hallway of the 100-year-old house. The floorboards creaked eerily beneath their feet. Bea held out her phone in front of her like a flashlight, illuminating the hallway in front of them, but it wasn't really enough to see much. Maddie flinched at every groan of the old house. After a few minutes, she pulled her cell phone out of her pocket, intending to use the screen for more light. But then her phone pinged in her hand. She started, then she rolled her eyes at herself. It's just your phone, silly. Calm down. She checked her messages. Of course, it was Gareth.
Where are you?
She felt a sense of relief. It was easy to feel completely isolated in the dark house with Bea. She was already on pins and needles from the jump scare in the bathroom and the cook in Hell's Kitchen. But this was another level. All of the lights were off and the hallway was totally dark. It was super creepy. Maddie started to text Gareth back, but B stopped her.
Is that your sugar daddy? Don't tell him where we are. He'll ruin it for sure.
No, he won't.
Yes, he will. He'll tell Becca and she'll be up here in 2 seconds.
Maddie bit her lip. She saw B's point, but she didn't want to lie to Gareth. They were in a relationship now. She was trying to turn over a new leaf. Boyfriend, she thought, testing up a word. He's my boyfriend. So what would a girlfriend do? Dang, relationships were hard. She wasn't good at this. If he was her boyfriend, shouldn't she tell him where she was? She said to B. I have to text him something. What if he gets worried and tells the staff we're missing?
All right, then tell him you dropped something and we went back for it. Tell them to keep going and we'll meet them up outside. Just tell him not to worry, all right?
Maddie was kind of annoyed at B's bossy tone, but she understood her friend's tension. This was a ghost hunt, after all. And they were breaking all the rules. The second floor was off limits. She really didn't want to get caught by any of the staff working at the manor. She started texting Gareth back. Don't worry, I'm with B.
I got that. Where?
We went back for something, don't worry. We don't want to hold up the group. We'll meet you outside in like 15 minutes. Maddie felt pretty good about those texts. It was vague enough that she wasn't lying, so she didn't think she had broken any girlfriend rules, technically. She still felt a little guilty for ditching him. She went to slip her phone back in her pocket, but it pinged again. Gareth had texted back.
I'm coming to get you.
No, don't. Maddie stopped herself mid-sentence before hitting send. Shit, what should she say? She hesitated before typing out her text message. How did he intend to find her? He sounded like he knew where she was going, but that was impossible. Maybe he meant to track her through the haunted house somehow, like he had special skills from the army? She really didn't know. Then her phone started to ring.
Ugh, for real? He is totally smothering you.
He's just worried. We kind of took off without telling anyone. I'm surprised Becca hasn't called you.
She has, but I ignored it.
Maddie bit her lip. She felt a little uncomfortable. B sighed.
Fine, answer it, I'll wait.
Her little goth friend stood with her arms crossed and her weight on one hip, looking sassy and annoyed in the middle of the dark hallway. Maddie felt flustered. All this cell phone business was ruining the vibe. She could see the disappointment on B's face and she felt bad. She could tell this was really important to B, even if she didn't really understand it. Maybe Gareth was being a little overprotective? Did she really need to pick up his call? After a long hesitation, Maddie rejected the call and put her phone on silent. She texted him back. We'll just be a few minutes. See you outside. Then she pocketed her phone. She didn't look to see his reply. She didn't want to get cold feet. Then she said, all right, let's go quick, before they come looking for us. B looked surprised. Then a mischievous grin crossed her face. The little goth girl turned up the screen light on her phone. She flashed it around the dark hallway, then they continued towards the stairs.
Hey there, thanks for listening. Shit got spooky, huh? Maybe in the next chapter we'll see a real ghost, or maybe B's got a few screws loose. You never know with these kids. Anyway, you can always read ahead in the print or ebook, available now on Amazon.com, link in description below. So what do you think of the new art style? Looking slick, huh? All episodes are created by author and producer, a Mariposa, a little one-man operation called Black Butterfly Productions. So like and subscribe to this channel, and give her some props. Alright, I'm gonna make a sandwich. You have a nice weekend. See you in the next chapter of Heart of the Wolf.